Welcome everyone. This is my preview or my intro to Lightroom. Lightroom has become one of the most powerful photo editing packages out there, and it is now to the point where I do all of my work through Lightroom, and about 85% of my photos only see Lightroom. So no matter what I need to do to the pictures, about 85% I can get that done with Lightroom. There's about 15% that I take over to Photoshop to do cloning or layering or some specialized toning that you just can't do as well, or if at all, in Lightroom. So, but the majority of my photos only see Lightroom. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and I will bring up my Lightroom for you. Now, hopefully you are seeing Lightroom. If you're not seeing my screen, somebody scream and yell, because you should be seeing it. So what you're looking at now is the basic Lightroom screen. Actually, I'm going to change something just a little bit here. And so we're looking at the grid view, and so we can see the pictures in grid. So Lightroom started as a database program. It was built to manage photos so you could find them, and it is still a very powerful database. So one of the beauties of Lightroom is that once you bring photos into Lightroom, then you can easily find them if you do just a couple of steps. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But there's a very important concept that you have to understand with Lightroom. Lightroom does not work on your original photos. It makes a copy of the photo when you do an import, and it's working on the copy of the photo, which they call a thumbnail, and it creates a text file that's called a sidecar. And the sidecar contains all the information about whatever you do to that photo. If you add a caption to it, if you rename it, if you change the color, if you make it darker, anything that you do to the photo is maintained in that sidecar. And then when you go to export or to print the photo, then it takes the information from the sidecar, goes and finds the original file, makes a copy of it then, and if you're exporting, and then adds that information from the sidecar to the original and makes a copy. Your original has not changed, so it is still sitting wherever you put it, totally unchanged. That's very important because that means it's a non-destructive program. So if you make a change to something and you don't like it 3 days later, you can always go back. You have a full history of everything you've ever done to it. So unlike, say, a Microsoft Word document, where if you create a document, you write some text, save it, you open it up again and change some of that text and save it, and then the next time you open it, you can't go back to the first version. It's gone, right? So with Lightroom, it doesn't work that way at all because of the sidecar relationship with the original file. It's very important to remember, because people are always saying, wow, I don't want to try something because I'm afraid I'm going to ruin my original. You're not. You can't. You just can't. And people get awful wrapped up around where's the file stored. As long as Lightroom knows where it is, it doesn't matter. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So when you get started with Lightroom, when you first start, you have a blank canvas. So you have to import photos. Import is a misnomer. And I've tried and thought about what should it really be called. Can't come up with anything better. Obviously they couldn't either, so it's called import. And you don't really import. You're not importing your originals. You're importing a thumbnail of the original. That is a very high quality thumbnail, but nonetheless, it's a thumbnail. So when I look at this photo, I'm looking at a copy of the photo. That's a very small copy, not the original. And so when I import, I am thus bringing in a copy of it, but Lightroom will also let me manage where my original is sitting. So the way I like to work, and an awful lot of people do in Lightroom, is say you have your card that you took out of your camera, and you want to transfer your pictures to your computer, right? So you can hit import, and when you import, you have a choice of, I'm going to click on import down here in the lower left. You have a choice of what are you doing with the photos. So let me go ahead and put this card in my card reader, which happens to be on the back of my computer, and see what's there. So on the left side, it asks me, what's your source of your photos? So my source is going to be EOS Digital. That's the card. Then I have a choice of what I'm going to do with it. I can copy it from the card to my computer. I can move it from the card to the computer. When I move it, that means it's erasing everything on the card and moving it literally to the computer. If it's already sitting on the computer and I want to move it to another place, I can do that. If it's already on the computer, I just want to add it to my catalog, I can do that. And so then it asks me, where are you going to store it if you're going to copy it? And that's where people get really, really messed up or confused. And like I said earlier, it doesn't matter at all where it's stored as long as Lightroom knows where it's stored. So I use an external hard drive like this to store all my photos. I have a 4 terabyte external hard drive that I use while I'm on the road. In my office, I have a 10 terabyte hard drive that has everything. So I will copy all the photos off of my card onto the 4 terabyte portable hard drive. Like I say, I'm not working out of my office these days. I'm up in Vermont hiding out. And so I don't have access to my original, but I made a copy of my database and my catalog and my photos to put on my 4 terabyte hard drive.
Loren, can you reiterate one question? When you copy, is it still on your card?
Yes. Copy means it's making a copy. If you move, it's then no longer on your card. So you always want to copy because you don't want to erase your card in your computer. You always want to erase your card in your camera. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So the whole basis of Lightroom is it's a catalog. And so what we're seeing here is the import into the catalog, and I'm going to go ahead and cancel and take a step back here. And so the catalog is very similar to the card catalog in the good old public library. If you remember the card catalog where you went flipping through paper and then you found the book you wanted, then you had to walk over to the shelves and pull the book off the shelves. Lightroom works exactly the same way, kind of, digitally. So it is storing all the information about your photos, but as long as your photos are sitting wherever you told it, it's fine. If somebody in the library, Loren? What's that?
Can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
When you put them onto when you import them and put them onto your hard drive, do you put them in various folders? Do you rename the?
I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I'm going to mute.
Yep.
Loren, just one question. I have downloaded some pictures to a hard drive, but there are still some images in the Lightroom, I'll call it library, like you would show on the bottom of your screen, but not all of them are there. And if I click on one of those, I wish we went back to the other screen, but if I click on something, it'll say file can't be found.
Okay. So what that is as I was explaining in the old library, at the public library, if somebody didn't put the book back where it belonged and you went through the card file and you said, oh, it belongs on that shelf, and you go over there and it's not there, what do? It's not there, right? So the same thing will happen in Lightroom. If you move a photo from one folder to another or from one hard drive to another without doing it through Lightroom, Lightroom will say, hey, it's gone, it moved, what happened? They have built in a way to find them, and if you're missing some, they'll have an exclamation mark up when you're in the grid view. Let me see if I have any missing ones. I don't.
I've seen it.
So you click on that exclamation mark, And the best way to find them is remember what the file name is and click on that exclamation and it'll try to find it for you. You type in the name in the search area and then it will go and say, is this the one you want? So typically you might have, and it's looking for in that case, the file name.
Mhm.
But whatever you find, it will say, do you also want similar items to be found, which you probably do. So if you moved a whole bunch of pictures on your hard drive through your desktop, not through Lightroom, Lightroom's not going to know where they are. So that makes sense, right? If you moved them, you didn't tell Lightroom, just like the old public library. If you didn't write it on the card catalog, you can't find the book, right? So you never want to move photos once you've imported them into Lightroom unless you move them through Lightroom. Now, it's not hard to move them in Lightroom, but for this overview, that's a little too much. So we're not going to go into how to move them, but just know that you can.
Fair enough. Thank you.
And so when you're importing, let's go back to that. You want to tell Lightroom, the fastest way is to have it. Let me click on my input here. The fastest way is to tell it, copy all the pictures off my card onto my hard drive. If you're used to dragging and dropping your pictures off of your card to your hard drive, you can do that first and then come to Lightroom and add them to the catalog. But if you do that, you're adding a step. So you can do that in one step. So you can have multiple catalogs if you want, but Lightroom will hold millions of photos. And again, I got ahead of myself a little bit here on the import. So the catalog will hold millions of photos. Here in the upper left of my catalog, you can see that I have 81,343 photos in here. I could delete probably half of them, but that's something I have. So I only have, when I first started, I was doing, first started with Lightroom. I was doing, I had a pet photography business at my sister-in-law's store. I was doing some weddings at the time. I was doing some architectural work. I was doing my fine art work. I was a photographer for the annual bicycle race in Somerville, which has tens of thousands of people coming. One of my other big clients is Far Hills Race Meeting, which is a huge horse race event. And so I had separate catalogs for each one of them. And it got kind of crazy. And I thought, wait, why do I have separate catalogs? Why don't I just put them all in one? And as I did a little more research, I found out that's the way to go. You only need to have one catalog. Now, I will say that I do have two catalogs that I use now. I do printing for photographers. So I have a separate catalog for images that I'm using to print for other photographers. The reason being is I don't want there to be any chance at all that I mix somebody else's photos in with mine and I either sell them as mine or use them for something that's mine. So just to be super duper safe, I always put client photos in a separate catalog. That way I cannot accidentally do anything with their photos and they end up being sold as mine, which would be pretty horrible. So, so now I have all of my photos in one catalog. You can see 81,000. And when I import, I will put them into, I will do a couple of different things. So let's go through that real quick here. Okay, so on the left side, I've told it from my EOS Digital, which is my card that came out of my camera. I'm going to copy them to this catalog, and then I'm going to tell it, where are you going to store them? So when I first started doing this, I stored them by date. So you can see, I even have back to 1998. I would store them by year, and then within that year, I would have days of the year. And it wasn't real quick, but you can see since 2013, I haven't done that. The ones that are here are test ones that I did during other classes. But starting in 2013, I said, wait a minute, storing by date makes no sense because then I have to remember when I took a picture. And I can't remember what I had for lunch an hour ago, right? And so the database does that kind of work. I don't need to do that work. I don't need to think. I'm going to let the computer do the thinking. That's what a database does. So then I started storing them by subject. So you can see I have lots of subjects here. And so that kind of was okay. But if I took a picture of a dog in Somerville on a winter day, do I store that in a folder that says Somerville? Do I put it in one that's New Jersey? Do I put it in one that's dog? Do I put it in one that's winter? So no matter which one I did, I have to think about, oh, when I took a picture of that dog, which folder did I store that in? Again, I'm thinking that's bad. You know, if I have to think, that's bad. So if I was starting over, I would just have one folder, and I'm doing this pretty much now, that I call photos. And some people will argue with me about this, but if you do proper captioning and proper keywords, all you need to do is just dump it in one folder, and all your photos are in one place, right? And it doesn't matter where that place is, as long as Lightroom knows what they are, or knows what it is. So, so after it snowed on Monday, and I went out and shot some photos. So I just as force of bad habit or force of habit, I still went out, or I still dumped those photos into a folder that I call Vermont Scenics. Why? It doesn't matter. I never look for photos by folder. I always do them by keyword. And so no matter where you store them, it doesn't matter. The important thing is that you that Lightroom knows where they are, and you very quickly make a backup. So I copy my photos off of my card onto my hard drive, and I use an external hard drive because that way I can always have my photos with me because I use a different computer at my office than my laptop that I carry with me when I travel or when I'm in Vermont. And so I also store my catalog itself, which is a different thing. The catalog is the card file versus the photos, which are the books on the shelves, right? So the catalog, I store also now on my external hard drive. I used to store it on the computer I was working on, but now I'm working on multiple computers. So I store it on my external hard drive. That way I can just plug that hard drive into any computer that has Lightroom on it, and I can fire up my catalog and see all my photos and do anything that I want to them. That's a little bit of a change from what I was doing a year ago, since I now have multiple computers I'm working on. But I back up that external hard drive extensively. I have a backup at my office. I have a backup at my home in New Jersey. I have a backup here in Vermont. And I use a cloud service called Backblaze to upload everything to that. So I never want to be without at least 2 copies of my photos. Never. Because a computer is going to crash. A hard drive is going to crash. It's not if, it's when. And 2 is not enough for me, so I need to have 3. So I never erase the card out of my camera until I have a second backup or a second copy on my hard drives. Okay. Now, Lightroom knows that's important. So when you're importing, up here in the upper left, it does several things for you. It will actually make a second copy in a different place. And I need I don't want to have a backup copy of this hard drive on this hard drive, so I would put that on a second place. I don't use Lightroom to do that because I shoot a lot of bad pictures and I delete a lot of bad pictures. So I don't want to have a hard drive full of bad pictures. So once when I import everything off my cards. I do my editing in the computer, not on the cards. Never delete anything in the camera. Bad things can happen. A couple of bad things. One, you can hit the button the button to delete all or erase all is right beside the button to erase one. How do I know that? And you can corrupt a card by erasing photos in the camera. So unless it's desperate times, you should never erase in the camera. Always do it in the computer. And so if I make a second copy right away, then I am putting all those bad photos onto a hard drive, and they're not going to be in Lightroom. They're not going to be in my Lightroom catalog. They're just going to be a backup sitting someplace and that I can't see. Bad, bad, bad. So I'm just filling up hard drive with bad photos. So I wait to make my copy, my backup until I've gone through and edited out my bad photos and deleted them. Then I do the backup of my external drive. And so my originals are still on the computer or the card I took out of the camera, and they're on my external drive. And then once I make that external drive, then I'm okay to erase that card that I put back into the camera. Okay, so when I'm importing over here on the right side, it'll ask me, there's a checkbox for don't import suspected duplicates. So if I'm importing photos, if I uncheck that, you'll see that this card has a lot of photos on it that were already imported. Okay, and they will show up as gray eventually.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so so that's a good thing to check, is don't import suspected duplicates. That way you don't get more than one copy of a photo on your drive, because there's no reason to have multiple copies. You can rename files. You can add settings to them. If you have presets that you like, which we'll talk about later, you can have that done right away. I always add keywords right away as I'm importing. So all the photos that we're seeing right here, let me see what's at the bottom. Yep, these are all from Cuba. I was there last week, made it out right in time. And so I would add keywords that cover all the photos that I'm importing at once. Now, if I shot multiple things during the day, there could be times when there are, say I shot some pictures in New York City, then I went back and shot some in New Jersey, and they were totally unrelated. I probably wouldn't put any keywords on them. But whatever I can add that are related, I'll add right away. So here I'm going to type Cuba, Havana. What else would it cover all of these? So this was during my photo workshop there. So I'd have workshop. And you might notice that as I'm typing, previously used keywords pop up automatically, which is a good thing, because I tend to spell things wrong sometimes. And so it will give me the same spelling on all of them.
Where are you typing? I don't see that.
Over here on the right. If you have, if your Zoom window is covering the right side of your screen,
Got it. Thank you. Yeah.
you can minimize it, because you might not be seeing what I'm getting. So if you have a Zoom window that has faces in it, you can click in the upper left a little line, and that will minimize it. Okay, so everybody's seeing where I'm typing keywords in here. And then, so I add as many keywords as I can right now, and we'll add more later. Keywords are vital to my whole system. So then it's gonna say where you're going to put them. So here's my Loren Photos T4 hard drive. And if I want to create a new folder, I can just create one there, oops, and call it Cuba. Or I can just drop them all down into my photos folder, which I'm going to do. So now if I click on my photos folder and I created that Cuba one, you can see it's in italic and it's gray, meaning that's a new folder that you're creating. So right now I would be adding photos based on this into a new subfolder, and I'm going to organize them in one folder, or I can choose by date, but that's how I got all these, and I don't recommend doing by date. I do recommend doing it by putting them all in one folder. Okay. So now all those photos are going to go right there. If I don't even need to create a subfolder, so in fact I wouldn't. And so I'm going to go back up and uncheck that, but I just wanted to show you how that worked. And so now all those photos are just going to go, all my pictures are going to go into this folder called Photos.
Loren,
And it doesn't matter where that folder resides, but I put them on the external hard drive because my internal hard drive has a limited amount of space, and external hard drives are essentially unlimited. So when it fills up, I go buy another bigger one and move everything over. And
Loren,
I do that
can I ask you
movement
a question?
in Lightroom. Okay.
Question, Loren.
Yes.
If I already have a huge collection of photos on an external hard drive, how do I make that my source?
Okay. So during the import, you just come up here on the very top and click Add. And it won't move the photos. It will just add them to the Lightroom catalog. Okay.
How do I select that hard drive?
Pardon me?
Well, once I plug in the hard drive to the computer, how do I select it on the
Well, so your source on the left side, it would be your source.
Okay.
So
it'll come up there once it connects.
So once you connect it, it will show up here as the source. So if the source was Loren Photos T4, which is where they are, then you just add them to the catalog. So think of it as a public library, and the books were already on the shelf, but they weren't in the card catalog, And so you filled out new cards and just said, here's where the books are. Same thing. Here's where the photos are. Just add them to the catalog.
Thank you.
Okay. And you won't need to worry about this whole moving thing. You're just adding.
Okay. Makes sense. Thanks.
And so photos can be sitting on multiple hard drives or multiple computers, or multiple computers would be tough. But if you have some photos on your internal hard drive and some on your external hard drive, that's fine as long as you have storage space. And the reason I'm putting everything on external drives is purely storage space. Plus, it gives me the ability to take them with me. So if I'm not just always working at my office. Okay.
Excuse me, Loren. It's
Yes.
Carolyn. It's Carolyn. Can you just explain again the difference between the left side folders and the right side folders?
Yes. So the left side is where the pictures are coming from. The middle is what pictures you want to import. So you can uncheck all of them and just say, I just want to import these photos and check them. And then the right side is where you're going to, if you're going to move them or copy them, where you're going to copy them to. So left side is from, right side is to. If they're already sitting there and you hit add, I'm going to need to get some photos here so I can add. They're probably already added. I don't have any. Yeah, you would just, if you click add, you see the right side changes to my catalog rather than showing hard drives. Does that make sense?
Yes, I was talking to a muted thing. Thank you.
I always feel like a muted thing. I don't know.
Loren?
So, another
Hi,
question?
Loren. Yeah, hi, this is Janice. If I were to import photos from Photoshop, and I've already starred and put keywords on those photos, if I import them into Lightroom, will it bring over all of those keywords and star ratings that I had put in?
Not the keywords, maybe the star ratings.
Okay.
Not the keywords.
Okay.
So the one bad thing about Lightroom is it's very proprietary. So and Adobe has made us clients for life by doing the subscription model. So you have to pay them $10 a month or whatever it is, and as long as you pay them, you can use Lightroom. When you stop paying them, then things get dicey. When they first started the subscription model, when you stopped paying them, you couldn't even access your photos, and people went nuts on them, and they listened. So now it's at the point where if you stop paying the subscription, and it takes about 3 months after you stop paying before they notice, but they make you check in on the internet at least every 3 months. If you stop paying, you can no longer tone your photos. You can't add any captions or keywords to them. You can't do anything except look at them, and now you can export them. Before you couldn't export them at all. So any changes that you made to the looks of the photo, remember that's only happening in Lightroom. It's not happening to your original. So until you export it, nothing has happened to your original. So if Lightroom goes away, if you stop using it, you stop paying for it, all those changes that you ever make, including keywords, are no longer available to you. So they have us for life. Fortunately, it's good. Now, I'm a firm believer that at some point, somebody's gonna come along with something better. As part of being that something better, they're gonna figure out a way to incorporate everything that we've done in Lightroom without having to export every photo. Because if I had to export 80,000 photos and then re-keyword everything, you know, I'd have to be quarantined for 5 years. So whoever comes up with the next best thing, be it Adobe or whoever, is going to figure out a way to incorporate everything out of Lightroom, because there is such a mass amount of people using Lightroom that the only way that they can take over Lightroom is be able to incorporate what they have in it. I'm a firm believer in that, and I've talked to people at Adobe about that, and they think the same way. So I'm not at all scared about Adobe's viability or Adobe doing something that locks me out of all of my photos. So 100 years from now, maybe, but 100 years from now, I probably don't care a whole lot. So,
Loren?
Yes.
This is Kristen. I have a question about the Lightroom catalog. I wasn't aware that it would be best to have your Lightroom catalog on the external hard drive. So I actually have mine on my laptop hard drive. How much of a challenge is it to move that? Is it easy?
Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Okay.
I did that for years. And the reason I stopped doing that is because I started using a desktop computer more. When I opened a photo gallery last year. And so if you're only using a laptop, that's actually a pretty good thing to do, is to have your catalog on your laptop and your photos on an external hard drive. Reason being is you don't have to have your external hard drive plugged into your laptop to access your catalog. So if your catalog is sitting on a laptop and you don't have your external hard drive plugged in, you can still open the catalog, you can see the thumbnails, you can add keywords, you can do a lot of things. You can't tone the photos because it needs to access the original photo.
Okay.
There is a way, but so if you're only working off of one computer, that's a very good way to do it.
Okay, thank you.
If you're working off multiples. But if you do want to do that, all you have to do is drag and drop it to wherever you want, and then make sure you open that catalog the next time you open. So if you wanted to move it from your laptop to your external hard drive, just drag it over to your external hard drive, and then the next time you open Lightroom, you should double click on the catalog file that's sitting on the external hard drive, not just open Lightroom.
Okay.
So when you first open Lightroom, it's going to open the last catalog that you looked at. So if you have multiple catalogs, it's going to open the last one every time. So if you put catalogs in multiple places, you can. So if you happen to have multiple catalogs, say you did like I did, and for different subjects you created multiple catalogs, you can easily import the catalogs into your main one. So you could just go up under File, and this is the same for Mac and Windows. You just come down to Import from another catalog, and that will pull the photos, the photo information. Remember, it's not going to move the originals. It's going to leave the originals where they are, but it's going to bring the thumbnails and the sidecar information over, along with all the keywords and everything. So that is the way I work now. I went to Cuba. I took my laptop. I did not take all of my original photos with me. So I had another external hard drive. So I put all my photos on another external hard drive. I created a new catalog that I called Cuba.
Yeah.
And that way, while I was in Cuba, I could work on that catalog. As I'm working now, I have my external catalog. I create a new one for every trip I go on. I put all my photos from that trip on that while I'm shooting. So every day I'm downloading photos. That way I have a backup as I'm going. And then when I get back, I will import that catalog into my main catalog, which is what I did here. So, okay. So the catalog can be a little intimidating, but it doesn't need to be. You know, you have your choice of how you want to see your photos. So this is the grid view. You can, down here in the lower right, change the size of the thumbnails you're looking at, so you can see as many or as few as you like. If you double click on a photo, it'll bring it up to be in the expanded view, so you can see each one individually. And so the main catalog of Lightroom always has three panels, and they're oddly called left, center, and right. And so on the left side, we have the navigator on top. So we're here in the library mode. And so we have the navigator, which shows us the photo. And if we click on it, we can zoom in. And right now we're at 1:1, and I can drag this little box around to zoom in on the photo. I have choices of how much I want to enlarge. I can go 3:1. I have, you know, whatever I want to do. I usually am working in the fit, so it fits in the window. And then I have the catalog. So it's showing me all photographs. Like I said, 81,343. It will show me the last ones I imported. So these will be the snow from earlier this week. And then beneath that are folders. Now, a lot of people will use folders to find their photos. I think that's a not best practice, let's put it that way. So as where's my, let me click on it. I'm not finding my external hard drive. So you can go through here, there it is, and see your photos. If you did them by subject matter, you could do that. But again, if you're looking for photos by subject matter, you have to remember what subject matter or what subject title you put your photos into, rather than having the computer do it. So I leave my folders area closed because this is the one area that you can actually screw up your photos. And by screwing up, I mean changing location. So if you did already have your photos on, say, your internal hard drive on your computer, and you want to put it on an external hard drive, this is where you would do it. So you would find the photos that were in, say, well, do I have a folder here that looks like anything? If I had well, say these photos in this animals one, I wanted them to be in art show. So I could just do a Command A or Control A on Windows, Command A on Mac, Control A on Windows, and I'm selecting all of them. And I could just drag and drop them into art show, and it would physically move them on my hard drive. If I wanted to move them to a different hard drive, I could just, again, drag and drop. So if I wanted, right now they're in Loren Photos T4, if I wanted to drop them in my main Macintosh hard drive, I just drag and drop. Or I could just click this folder and drag it into another folder, and it will all go very nicely, okay? So if you want to move pictures around after you've imported them, or after you've put them on your either internal or external hard drives, and they've been imported into Lightroom, you need to do that here in the folders area, okay? And again, we're just doing an overview of how things work. I'm not going to show you exactly how everything works today, because that would take way too long. So one of the ways to find your photos is to create collections. And collections are very powerful ways to add photos to a collection so you can find them quickly. So I have lots of collections, but I don't want to make too many collections. I know some people who everything they shoot, they make a collection, and they end up with thousands of collections. Then again, they're doing the work of the database. They're having to remember, what collection did I put that in? And they're having to do that kind of work. But I do just you know, I have maybe 50 collections. I do a travel one, so pictures from certain locations where I'm traveling, I will drop into a collection. And again, in thumbnails, I can make them bigger or smaller. So you can see under my travel collection, or my travel collection set, the collection set looks like a big file drawer, and each file in it looks like a file. So I have a Cuba, I have France, I have Iceland, you know, all kinds of different things. And so if I have a picture that I like, I will just drag and drop it into the, you know, from the Cuba, I'll drag and drop it into the Cuba folder. And so here are my 62 favorite photos that I shot in Cuba last week. Okay. And so that's a manual way to do it. And so, like I say, I have lots of folders, but I don't want to get too many, right? Or lots of collections. I can also create a smart collection. And what a smart collection does, and to create any collection, you just click on the plus sign here and come to create collection or create smart collection. Create smart collection uses the power of the database. So let's call this one test. And I can put it inside our collection set already. And I can have it use the database to do all kinds of things. It can find it, any picture that was in the range of, say, March 1st to March 28th, and it will create a collection set like that. It could be the ratings, which we'll talk about later, or the pics, or the source, or it can be just, you know, there is a fairly unlimited amount of data that you can associate with your photo. You can have it find, you know, all the photos that were shot with your 100mm lens. You know, how handy is that? I don't know, but you can. Actually, that usually means it's a macro photo. So I do have one that is like that. So it's my favorite macro photos. And so you can also have it do any searchable text. And so text contains Cuba, and I'm going to mute everybody again because I'm hearing background noise. The text contains Cuba, and then I can have it also create based on a pic flag, which we'll talk about later. So it's flagged, and now it will create a smart collection that has all my Cuba pictures that I flagged with a white flag. The beauty of that is, so you can see I have a Vermont one with 619 here. So it's a smart collection. So these ones that I shot last week of the winter, which you see on top here, automatically went in there as soon as I said, this is a photo in Vermont and I like it. I didn't have to manually add that to the collection. It just automatically goes right into it. So these are my Vermont pics, you know, my favorite, or the photos that I liked from Vermont. So you can see I have 619 in that, which is a little overdone, but within these collections, it becomes a very powerful way to find photos. And you can also create the collections to be synchronized with Lightroom CC, so your mobile version. So there are two versions of Lightroom. There's the classic, which we're looking at, and then there's the CC, which is their mobile version. So if you bought the version, so when you're buying Lightroom, you have your choice. Do you want the CC version or do you want the classic version? When you buy the classic version, you also get Photoshop and you get CC with it, and you get a limited amount of storage online. When you buy the CC version, you only get the CC version, but you get 1 terabyte of cloud-based storage. And that's because the CC version, your photos are all stored in the cloud. They're not stored on your local hard drive, although they have now made an option where you can add that. But basically, they're all stored in the cloud. So to access them, you need access to the internet. So if you're in Cuba, you're probably going to be in trouble when it comes to to accessing the internet. So I found that I think CC version is best for people who share a lot of photos online, or they're shooting them with an iPhone and want to catalog them right away. And with the CC version, you can make a lot of the toning adjustments that you can with Classic. But Classic has more options because it's the original. And Adobe was smart in that they didn't make CC do everything that Classic would do right off the bat, because they knew they couldn't make it work right. So they're slowly adding, or probably as fast as they can, adding the features of Classic into CC as they go, rather than just trying to jam it in and then have a lot of bugs. So they did that right, in my opinion. But if you are using the Classic version, you have CC. And so on your phone or your iPad or whatever, however many devices you want, you can share photos out of your catalog to them, to the CC version, to the mobile. And so you synchronize that. And so you can see that there's a little, maybe you can see, there's a little double-headed arrow beside the ones that have been synchronized. The bad thing is you can't synchronize a smart collection, which kind of stinks. So if you do want to synchronize, all you have to do is right-click on the folder name and come down to Sync with Lightroom, and then that will synchronize. And within a minute or so, you can open it up on your iPad or your phone or whatever and see the photos there. So that's pretty nice. So you notice I don't have all of mine synchronized, because that would be too much. And you only get so much room on the cloud with the Classic version. So Classic is still the way to go, unless you're doing a lot of mobile work and shooting things with your iPhone a lot, or whatever mobile device. I love the collections. I use them a lot, but that's not the only way that I find photos. I do the keywording, and keywords are vital. So every photo, I've tried to keyword it as I import, but then I will go back in and this one I just shot and I haven't even gone back in yet. So I will add keywords like covered bridge. This one's middle bridge. So you can see again that those words that I've used before are showing up. That's probably pretty much it for that one. And so every photo, all hopefully 81,000, have keywords that I've added. Now, I had a mentoring client who had about 40,000 photos with no keywords in there, and she had them all in one folder. Had absolutely zero way to find her photos other than scroll through, which is, mind-bending to try to find it. Yeah, Gino.
Can you rename keywords?
Yes, you can change keywords all you want. And in fact, as you're keywording, so like I was saying, the woman didn't have any keywords, and so I told her, you have to keyword all your photos. And she looked at me and said, really? So, yeah. So she spent the next, 4 or 5 weeks with her laptop on her, while she's watching TV with her husband, she said, she would sit there and keyword, and pretty soon she had everything keyword, and now she can find anything within minutes. So once you started putting keywords in, it'll actually give you keyword suggestions based on what you've used before, and you can create keyword sets. So if there's a lot of keywords that you're using for a certain amount of photos, you can create a set of them, and you just do that by come down to Edit Set, and then you can just add whatever keywords you want to that set, and click on it, and it will add those keywords to whatever photos you select. So there's lots of ways, and there's a list of keywords. So all the keywords that are used are listed here. So you can see I have a whole bunch, and it tells you how many times you've used that keyword. And if you want to find the photos that are associated with that keyword, you can just click on that, and it will bring them all up. Whoops, I hit the wrong spot here. It will bring those 204. There we go. It will bring those photos up for you. So that's pretty cool too. So there's lots of ways to find your photos. Question?
Is there, do you have to manually put in all the keywords, or is there software to look at the pictures and do object recognition to add, suggest keywords?
Yes.
Okay.
So there is nothing that I know of that works with Lightroom Classic to automatically keyword. Lightroom CC does not use keywords, and it actually goes into the photos themselves and looks at the photo, what the content of the photo is, and will search for things like that. So if you do a search for barn in CC, it will actually look at the photo, which is absolutely amazing, and bring up all the pictures of barns or cars or whatever. But the bad thing is, if you type in wife, it's not going to find all the wives in there. No, it's a manual thing, because even if it wasn't, I wouldn't trust somebody's programming to know what I want to keyword.
I understand that, but you could. I would think what I would like was for the automatic software to suggest keywords and you review them.
No, I don't know that any. I'm fairly certain that there is not anything that's working with Lightroom at this point to do that.
Okay.
The Classic.
All right,
like
thanks.
I say, on the CC side, you don't even use keywords. It's physically looking at the photos.
Okay.
Will they incorporate that into the Classic sometime? My guess is maybe, but I think they do that off of their server online. So that would be I think that's a fairly server intensive thing. So to put that on individual computers would probably really be pretty tough.
So Lauren, after you type it, you choose your photo, you type in your keyword, then is there a place where you save what you just typed?
So it is saving all the time.
Oh, okay.
It is constantly saving for you, so you never have to hit save. So say I have these photos of the covered bridge here in town, and I put, which one did I put the keywords on? I don't know. But if I want to add them to all of them, I can just click on the first one, hold down my shift key, click on the last one, and select it. And now you can see that it has covered bridge with a asterisk and middle bridge with an asterisk. That means that the keywords are on some of the photos, but not all of them. So if I want to make sure I have that on all of them, I just add another comma and add middle bridge, comma, I did 2 commas, covered bridge. And then just when I hit enter or return on the keyboard, we'll set that for them. So that's how you save it. So like these, all of these are Ottaquiche River. So once I see what photos I had from the river, you can see I didn't bother to edit very tight yet. Ottaquiche. And I don't want to have to try to remember how to spell that. It looks like I've spelled it 2 different ways already. Oh no, one just has a period. So now that keyword is on all the photos. So if I want to find all of my photos of a covered bridge, all I have to do is hit Command F or Control F, just like find on Word or any other program, and type covered bridge. Oops, what did I do? And hit enter. So then there are all of my photos of the covered bridges.
Okay, you were frozen there for a minute.
Okay. Uh-oh, I'm getting a warning my internet connection is unstable. I hope my wife's not using it downstairs. Okay. So that got me, by typing that keyword, just covered BR, I didn't have to type out bridge, got me all the covered bridge photos that I had. So down here on the bottom, I have my option of how I want to sort them. I can sort them by capture time. I can sort them by the order they were added to the catalog or whenever they're edited, or ratings or picks. So you'll notice that some of them have a white flag on them. So after I import, first thing I do is I go through and I throw out the bad ones and I mark the ones that I really like. And so I will just double click on a photo and bring it up big, and I will go through it by using the arrow keys on my keyboard and just go through one picture at a time and say, is this a great photo, a good photo, or a bad photo. That's my rating system. Great, good, or bad. And if it's great, I tap the P key on my keyboard, and that puts a white flag on it and calls it a pick. If it's bad, I type the X key on my keyboard. That puts a black flag on it and sets it as rejected. If it's a good picture but not great, I don't do anything, and it just stays nothing. So when I go back to the grid view, you can see that the photo that I put the black flag on is grayed out now. And so it's ready to be deleted. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But if I don't want that to be black flagged anymore, all I have to do is click on it and the black flag goes away, or I can select the black flag down here on the bottom. So first thing I do is I go through, select my best ones, select my good ones, and select my bad ones. And then I delete my bad ones right away. So,
excuse me, Loren?
Yes.
How you doing? The number one picture in this on this slide deck, is that the original picture, or did you treat it in Lightroom and to make it like that?
So these are, yes, this has been edited. How do I know that? So there are icons that show up here in the grid view. And so this one has the plus minus, and when I click on it, it says, oops, actually I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to click. When I put my cursor over that, it says the photo has developed adjustments to it. This one it has keywords. If it was in a catalog, or if it was in a collection, it would show you the collections. So this one's down here, photos in collection. If I click on it, it will show me what collection it's in. So there's lots of little icons will show up here in the grid view for you, so you know which one's been edited. So yes, that's why that one looks so much better than that one. Because,
okay, thank you.
Because it is. Yes.
Is Lucy. I have a question.
Okay.
Will collections pull from folders? Like I still have all my photos on date codes. So if I went back and did keywording and developed collections, would they pull photos?
So it's not. So remember, your photos your originals are not being anything done to them. These are copies of them. So your originals are still going to be sitting wherever they were, no matter what you do in here, unless you go into the folders area and tell them to move. Okay. So when you do a collection, here's if I can pull. So this is a collection from British Columbia. So say I didn't want to have this photo in my collection anymore. All I have to do is click on it and hit delete key on the keyboard. And it deletes it from the collection. Doesn't delete it from the catalog. So it's still in Lightroom. It's still, everything else is there, but it's just not in a collection anymore. Okay.
Loren, can you hear me? This is Linda.
Hi, Linda.
Hi, Loren. Why did you say you didn't like folders? And if you don't like folders, where, when you import your files?
It doesn't matter where so if you're creating folders for every subject you do, and you have a picture of a dog in winter, and you have a winter folder and a dog folder, which folder do you put that photo in? Right, you have to think about it. I don't want to think. And so it doesn't matter where they are, is what I'm trying to get across. It doesn't matter where the photos are sitting. As long as you have keywords going or collections, you can find those photos much, much faster, right? So if I want to find my dog photos right now, I hit Command F. Actually, I need to make sure I'm up in all photographs. Command F, type dog, hit enter, and there are my dog photos.
Okay, is that finding them because you keyworded the word?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So I do that too, but so where do you put all your photos if you're not into a folder?
Well, they have to be in some folder on your computer, but it doesn't matter where. So once something is imported into Lightroom, and I make adjustments to that photo, I'm not going to export it right away until I know what I'm going to do with it. You know, this photo is just sitting there, right? I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I just like, it's my puppy, right?
A Bernese?
It is.
Nice.
So until I know I'm going to put that on the internet or do something with it, pop into focus, it's just sitting there. Or I'm going to print it. We'll talk about exporting later. But you know, I've had people who make an adjustment to a photo and then immediately export it and make a copy of it so they have it sitting someplace. And it's like, well, then how do you know where that is and what you've done to it? So you don't want to do that. You just don't want to.
When you imported your dog, the Bernese, you had to put it in some folder.
Right.
So where did you put it?
I don't know. I don't care. Lightroom knows.
Okay, if
and
you
Lightroom cares.
Well, so you're
Lightroom knows.
Make a folder for you?
Pardon me? No, you can just throw them all in one folder. It doesn't matter.
All your photos are in one huge folder.
Well, they're not because I didn't start that way, but they could be. I'm saying it doesn't matter. Get that out of your, you know, where they're sitting doesn't matter as long as Lightroom knows where they are.
It doesn't matter because you named it by a keyword. So for example, the dog, it would find all your dog photos.
Right. It would matter if you didn't keyword them because you wouldn't have any way to find them. But keywording takes such little time compared to thinking that it just is the way to do it. You know, I mean, if I want to find all my pictures of barns, I type Command F, type barn, and then I sort by pick, and I make my thumbnails a little bit bigger, and so all of my favorite barn pictures are right there.
So in other words, you could care less what folder your barns are in as long as you find all your barn pictures.
I have no idea what folder my barns are in.
But you could care less.
And I don't care as long as Lightroom knows, because
once you put the keyword barns in, it finds it automatically wherever they're at.
Exactly.
But
so this barn is in Vermont. This barn's in Pennsylvania. You know, if I was doing it by state, would I put them in Vermont, or would I put this one in Vermont, or would I put this one in Pennsylvania, or would I put all my barns together? So I don't want to have to do that thinking. You know, I can search for barn and Vermont and only see my Vermont barns.
Right. Lauren?
Yes.
Lauren? This is Carol. I think to clarify, if you already have them in multiple folders and you keyword them within their folders, their multiple folders, when you then do a keyword search, does it pull those pictures from all the folders or just
Absolutely.
One? It does pull them from all. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
So it doesn't hurt to have them in multiple folders.
Okay. Thank you.
But
it's not necessary.
It's not necessary. It becomes extra work.
Lauren, let me ask you a question, and you might have answered this before, so if you want me to hold off till the end, not a problem.
Okay.
Because I was having trouble with my laptop. When I first take pictures from my hard drive, I get a bunch of dates. Like, let's say I went to Spain for the whole month of August, and it'll give me each week or each day, basically, which doesn't do me any good because it gives me everything.
Right.
If I wanted to take, let's say, August 1st and then name it Madrid, I would just make it a keyword and move it over there, or?
So whatever photos you're seeing on the screen, you can batch keyword. Okay. You can keyword them all in a batch. Say I wanted to add the keyword orange to the barn photos that have orange color in them. So I could click on this one. On the Mac, I'd hold down the command on Windows Control and click on each individual photo that has the color orange in it. And then come over to here and put in orange.
Okay, great. Okay, I wanted to be sure. I apologize. Thank you.
That's fine. Right. Okay, so there are multiple ways that you can rate or highlight your photos. So I love using just that three system, 3 ways, either good, great, or horrible, right? So that's the way I do. You can also add stars to them. So you can click on a photo and you can come down here and give them star rating. I started out doing that, 1 to 5 stars. I couldn't remember the difference between, what's a 2-star difference between 2 and a 3-star. Is 1 star better than 5 stars, or 5 stars better than 1? If I'm number 1, I'm better than number 5. But if I'm going to a restaurant, I want a 5-star restaurant or hotel. So I gave up on the star ratings because I couldn't remember what the hell they did. You can also give them color ratings. So you can make them red or green or whatever color you want. Then when you click off of it, that color ends up on the outside of it. For a while, I had sticky pads, sticky notes up on the wall saying blue means this, yellow means this, and I couldn't remember what the hell it meant. So now I've done away with that for the most part. I do use one color for photos that I've added to Instagram. I make them yellow. So that way I can just look at a photo and know that I've put it on Instagram, and I don't have to think, gee, did I upload that to Instagram yet? There used to be a way to easily upload to Instagram from Lightroom. Instagram, being owned by Facebook, who is run by a bunch of ninnies, and I said it, they're ninnies, has now made it so you can't export right out of Lightroom into Instagram anymore. And about 2 years ago, they did it to Facebook, so you can't automatically upload, which just bewilders me why they'd want to make it harder for people, but they do. So you can no longer easily upload to Instagram. It's a real pain in the ass now, which is why I've pretty much stopped using it. But you can do star ratings, or you can do color ratings. And so you can also sort by label color. So if I want to see which ones I've done yellow or blue or whatever color, they're there. Or I can do it by rating. So my 5 stars will show up before my 1 stars. Let me get all the way to the top so you can see the ones that I've marked 5 stars. So sometimes I will use the star ratings if I've already selected them as a pick and I need to differentiate them a little bit so I can easily see doing something to sort them. I'll give them a star for a temporary thing to sort them within my picks. But I'm mainly using the pick flag and to bring out to grab the ones that I like the most. Okay. Let me get rid of my search terms so we can come back to, oh, how's my time doing here? Okay, we're good. So you have all kinds of things you can sort them based on, because again, it's a database and it has lots of information. So that's always fun. We have the grid mode. We can look at a picture individual. If we want to look at 2 photos side by side, we can do that. And so you can, down here on the film strip on the bottom, you can select one or select another one. And if you want to match that up, so say you had this picture and this picture, and you want to match them up, you can do that. You can have multiple pictures, so you can see, let me get rid of that one. So you can see multiple pictures at one time. So let's scroll back up to the top here. So if you can't decide which one you like the best, just click on a couple of them or 3 of them and say, okay, let's do it that way. And if we don't like one of them, we can hold down our command and click on the film strip and it'll hide it or add more photos to it. So you can see multiple ones at once to do comparisons. That's pretty handy. What else is missing here? You can rotate through them. You can build a slideshow right out of Lightroom, which I think is not real good. But if you select them multiple pictures, just hit the slideshow and it'll play them. It takes a while to build, so I'm not going to do that right now. Okay, so that's all happening here in the library module. So the library module is where you organize, where you find things, where you are able to sort them out and find your photos. let me get back over to my collections and
Lauren, the library module is like the card catalog in the library.
exactly. Exactly.
Lauren, you started talking about deleting photos, and I know when I go to remove a photo, there are some options. I don't quite understand the different options.
Okay. So if we've marked photos as rejected with the X key or hit the black flag, let me sort by capture time. That way I can find one that I can easily reject to make sure. Okay, we'll just make sure. So that one I don't need anymore. So I'm going to click on the photo, hit the X key, a black flag is going to appear. Now, if I want to delete it, I go up under Photo menu, come all the way down to Delete Rejected Photos. And it's going to give me some options. It's going to say, so you can see that I have 28 photos that I've marked with black flags, and they're grayed out, so I know when I look at them, they're ones to delete. So if I click Remove, that just removes them from the catalog, but it does not delete the photo from your hard drive. So it will just take it out of the catalog, doesn't touch your original. Very bad thing, because then you have a bunch of bad photos sitting on your hard drive and you don't know what they are. So that's horrible. So you want to delete from disk. And what that will do is remove them from the catalog and delete your original files. Okay, so it's gonna wipe them out, and you can't easily undo that. So those photos are gone. They're out of the catalog, and the original files are gone. But that's what you want to do, because there's no, if you don't like them, there's no reason to have them sitting on a hard drive. Because when I worked in the film days and I had a lot of slides, I rarely threw away a slide, and I had file cabinets full of slides. And I'd hope that sitting in the dark, somehow they got better, but it never happened. And same thing with digital. The longer they sit around, they're not going to get better. If they're out of focus, they're going to be out of focus forever. Now, if your exposure is a little off, you might want to hang on to it, because they're getting better at fixing exposure all the time. But if a photo's out of focus, it's gone. It's not coming back. So get rid of it. Trash it.
So when you delete it from the disk, I don't have something that I insert my card to. I go directly from the camera to Lightroom, after I've uploaded the photos. So it's going to take it off the card that's in my camera as well.
If it's plugged in,
right?
Well, if you're not transferring your photos off of cards into the computer, you're really creating problems.
I'm transferring from the camera that has the card in it to the laptop.
Right, you're transferring the original files. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
So when
that's what Lightroom's looking at then. So if you did a copy, that's the file Lightroom's looking at. Once you back that up, you can wipe off your card. You can clean your card.
Okay, but if I say to remove from after I've uploaded and I see some awful pictures, most of them, and I say remove from disk, it's taking it off the card that's in the camera?
No.
No.
Just off the hard drive.
Okay.
Just off the hard drive.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for cleaning that up. Okay. So, any other questions here in the library? I want to move on to the other modules here real quick.
Hey, Loren, this is John.
Hi, John.
Hi. Hey, you're using, I guess, you're doing whatever the files that are made in the camera. You are not, and when you're moving them over into Lightroom, you're not changing the file names. You're just leaving them whatever the camera named them. Is that what you're doing?
I do. You can, when you import, change the name, but I haven't found any benefit of doing that.
Because one of the things that I've got a number of different cameras. They're all naming the things different names. And I've let a couple of them, the battery in the camera, because I hadn't used it for a while, is run down. And so the thing has gone back to its initial settings. and I'm really been afraid that I'm going to end up, coming up with files that are the name the same as other files. I'm going to write over them. Any thoughts on that?
So yes. So I probably have, so this file name is numbered 1907. I probably have 15 or 20 photos in here numbered 1907. But Lightroom is smart enough to know that cards only hold a certain number of photos before they start renaming them the same thing. So it also looks at the date it's created, the camera, other metadata about the file, and so when you're importing and it says don't import suspected duplicates, it's looking at all of those things. So if I just did a search on this file name, I set my camera up to have some initials on it. So this file name is LF5S 1907. If I just did a search for that, I'd probably pull up 6 or 7 different photos that were years apart, maybe more than that. I don't know, maybe 15, maybe 20. I don't know. But I can add a title to them. I can add a caption to them. I can add all kinds of other information. So you don't have to worry about them being overwritten. That's not Adobe thought of that one for us. So
good
question.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can you create more than one library?
Well, it's called no. So library is a library. So the entire thing is called the catalog. You can have multiple catalogs, but you only have one library.
Okay. So I can't like save a library to a different name and then edit the library?
You can save a catalog different. There's no reason to that I can think of. But as we get into the develop module here, I'll show you a couple of tricks if you want to, to change your photos around a little bit.
Well, my thinking is, well, as we're learning how to use Lightroom, I might want to save my library and then do weird stuff that I think might do something I don't want to do, and then go back to where I was because I didn't like what happened.
Do you mean like when you're changing the look of the photo?
Well, if I'm creating, I've got like 15 years of photos that aren't in a library, and if I get to a point where I like it, but I'm thinking I want to change my library a little bit, but I don't want to risk of screwing it up and not be able to go back to where I was.
How would you? I just don't. No, that's not something you need to worry about.
Okay.
Let's just go there. That's not something you need to worry about.
Loren, before you go on to develop, I just want to make sure I get the gist of what you're saying. There's really no need to do folders or collections. If I just have a catalog that says all photographs and keyword well, that's all you really need to do?
Collections are pretty handy. Okay. So I like collections.
Okay.
But if you're heavy keyword, because like right now, if I just want to see my favorite photos from Cuba, I don't need to even type in Cuba. I can just click on Cuba and there they are.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. But like I say, I don't want to have thousands of those because then I'd have to go searching through thousands of things to find what I want to do. So, like I have a collection for a Lightroom demonstration with different photos that I'm going to use. So I throw them all in one collection. That way I don't have to do searches with multiple terms.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, let's go to the develop module. We're going to run out of time if we don't. So once you have a photo that you like, you want to, every photo needs to have something done to it. That's the reality of the digital age, and especially if you shoot raw format. So when you're taking pictures with a digital camera, it shoots one of two formats. RAW, which gives you all the data possible, and it creates a photo that is usually not as colorful and as bright as the JPEG, which is the other photo type. JPEG photos are compressed, so they're smaller, and they usually have a lot of toning done by the camera, which is good or bad, usually bad. And so I shoot only RAW, that way I have control over it, and I get the highest quality possible. So every raw photo and most JPEGs need to have some work done to them. And that doesn't mean that you shot it wrong or you did anything wrong. It's just the reality of digital. And so a RAW gives you a much broader space to work in and a possibility to make much greater changes. And so here in the develop module, which I got by clicking up here or tapping the D key on the keyboard, my right side changed. My left side looks pretty similar. I still have my collections, but I do have some other things which we'll look at here in a second. But on the right side, I have lots of ways to change the tone of the picture. So I can change the temperature, which means blue or yellow. So as I'm just dragging the slider, and the key to all of this is what I call season to taste. You know, what's right. It's the way what you saw, what you shot is what it should be. Below that is tint. That's red and green. I find you rarely need to make a picture red or green. And so as I slide it, you can see hopefully, numbers go plus or minus to the right of where I'm sliding. If I want to get back to 0, the quickest way to do that is just double click on the word and it zeroes it back out to the starting point. It might not be 0, it's the starting point. So if I want my temperature to be back where it was shot at, it'll be there. I can change my exposure, just dragging left or right. That might be a little too much. That might be a little too much. So I find that I'm damn good. My exposure is usually right. But seriously, exposure is, I rarely change. And same with contrast. But I do change the highlights, the shadows, the whites, and the blacks. So if I'm changing the highlights, it's just changing the lighter part of the picture. So you can see, like the pilings in the foreground, nothing is changing, but the sky is changing dramatically, and the highlight, the lighter parts of the picture. Same way with the shadows. Now the pilings are going to change, but the sky's not doing much, right? So again, it's season to taste. Whites get the absolute whitest part of the picture, and blacks are the blackest. Now I've found that almost every photo, the blacks need to be blackened a bit. So I like a black, a good solid black, so I go minus on that. We can make these adjustments on the right side. Below the tones, we have what they call presence. Texture adds detail to the finest part. So if you look at like the water in the foreground, you can see how it gets more detail. If you move it to the left, it smooths it out. So you can add texture or take texture out. That is a great thing if you take a picture of a person and their skin has lots of pores showing and you want to smooth it out. You just take the texture and we'll wipe that right out and really smooth that out. It looks pretty cool. Clarity adds contrast to the midtones, which is kind of a strange concept, but it will punch things up. So it will make it look sharper, even though it's not really. Dehaze tends to work in the blue parts of the picture, but if you have a scene like this and you whack it with dehaze, it will bring color right back out of that picture. Amazing. And if you're seeing pictures that look like that on the internet, that means they overdid it on the dehaze, right? So it's all a matter of not overdoing it. Let me go back to New York. Vibrance adds brightness to colors. So again, you can make it as crazy as you want it, but my goal in processing photos is to make them look the way I saw them. If somebody says, looks like you Photoshopped that, then I've failed. So I usually find that I take it up to the point where I think it's about right on the vibrance and the saturation. And then I wait a few minutes and look at it again and back it off, because I'm usually too impressed with myself to start when I'm starting off to really do it. So those are global changes that you can make. You also have the choice of making individual color changes. So if I wanted that blue sky to be brighter, I can just come down here to the blue slider, and it's also going to change the blues down here. So it's going to change all my blues. I can come down to luminance, and I can make the blues brighter. But you notice it's not changing the yellows or the orange or red or any other color, just the blue. Or if I want to make my blue darker, ooh, like that. I can change my saturation. So if I want the yellows to not be as saturated, I can take the yellow out of the picture, or I can make it really, really yellow saturation, or I can change the hues again with the blues. So I can make that blue become kind of a green or purple. So that's
Loren,
an individual color I can change with each one.
do you have access to this? If you brought this over into Photoshop, can you from Photoshop do that same thing with whatever it's called, get over there, and then when you come back into Photoshop, you can put layer mask on it? So
Sure.
that you wanted to make the sky but not the water?
Yes, but you can do some of that here too.
Okay,
so
you'll show us that or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So a photo like this, I already dehazed it a little bit there. So I would probably go in and add a little texture. I'm going to add some clarity. I punched up my dehaze a little bit. I'm going to bring the blacks blacker. I'm going to bring my highlights down a little bit. I'm going to open my shadows up, make my shadows a little bit brighter. And then I'm going to get on that vibrance a little bit and that saturation. And now my sky is brighter than the ground. That's too much on saturation, isn't it? So I can come up and start working locally on things. So here's a graduated filter. And so I can click and drag from whatever direction I start dragging in. And I'm going to
get the graduated filter?
This is the graduated filter, yes. I'm going to way overdo the exposure so you can see what happens here. So from the direction that I pulled, the first line from the direction I pulled, it happens 100%. I get 100% coverage. From the first line to the middle line is from 100% to 50%. From the middle line to the end line is 50 to 0, and below that, nothing happens. So I can turn this whatever way I want, and so you can see the farther the lines are apart, the softer the change is, the more gradual the change is. So again, whatever direction I started in, that's what's happening and where it's happening. So in this case, I'd probably want to have my line about right on the horizon. And there are ways to mask off this, but we don't have time to go into that. It's a little more advanced. So I can just adjust that sky. And so you can see only the sky is being adjusted. So I might just, like I say, I rarely change my exposure, but I'm going to come in on the dehaze a little bit. I might change my color balance a little bit, bring that back. And I can increase the saturation only in the sky. Way cool, way cool.
Question?
Yes.
Don't you really have to have a calibrated monitor to do this?
Only if, so let me just explain what calibrated monitor is. So there are ways to set your monitor so it looks the same all the time, and that's called calibration. If you want consistent results, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. Do you need one? No. I mean, if you're putting it on Facebook, Instagram, putting it on your blog, when you put it on Facebook, they recompress the photo and they change the color on you anyway. Same with Instagram. So it depends what you're doing. If you're making a nice print, you probably want to have a calibrated monitor so that you know what you're seeing is what you're really getting. But to do this, no.
Okay, thank you.
I do a lot on my laptop and then put them out on the internet. And then when I'm ready to make a print, I put it in my desktop computer, which has a calibrated monitor attached to it. And then I know my colors are accurate.
So really only if you're going to print, you need a calibrated monitor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Loren, these adjustments will only work if you get a proper exposure. Is that correct?
No.
Okay.
No. So look at her. I overexposed her. She's too bright, right? So I can fix that real quick. I'm going to just jump in on the highlights, bring the highlights down a little bit. Actually, this one I'll probably lower my exposure a little bit. Hang on, I'm in the wrong spot here. There we go. bring my exposure down a little bit, bring my highlights down. I always want my blacks to be blacker. I'm going to hit vibrance. I'm going to hit some clarity. I'm going to give her a little more texture. I'm going to lower my exposure just a little bit more. Now, when you have skin tones, you don't want to give it much saturation, if any at all. You know, I've got all these lovely colors that I'd like to saturate a little bit more, but watch what happens when I pump just a little bit of saturation into it. Look what her skin does. Bad. You know, you can go really crazy. So I rarely add saturation to skin tones, but I might pump that vibrance a little bit. You can give a lot of vibrance and that won't affect the skin tones much. Little dehaze. So, you know, I've got this white thing here. I don't like it. So I can go up here into the crop tool and I can crop that out. Put her eyes right there on the rule of thirds, just like it's supposed to be. That's looking pretty good. Now, if I have this bright area back here that I don't like, I can use the adjustment brush and I can highlight just that area. And I already have some adjustment going for some reason. And so I can mask off this area, but I can't see what I'm doing. So I have to come down here to show, select, and mask overlay. And that will show me in red whatever I'm masking off. So again, I'm doing this really quick because we got a lot to cover yet. So if I just mask off this area, we might as well darken this while we're doing it. Okay, now I'm going to turn off my overlay, come to my highlights, bring them down, and you can go 100, doesn't hurt. And now darken that background. And she's really popping out on me nice. So if I wanted to bring the saturation up on that, I could grab my graduated filter, bring it up from the bottom. Let me redo that and just change my saturation there. So you can see I'm pumping more saturation into the clothing. So if I show my mask overlay, you can see that there's some mask showing up in her skin, which I don't want to do. So I can erase that. I can just grab the brush, come down, hit erase, and I'm on auto mask, and we're starting to get into a little more advanced things, but you can see as I make my brush a little bit bigger that I'm erasing the mask on her face, but I'm just leaving it on the clothing there. And so if I were to do my exposure, you can see it doesn't do her face at all. It's only hitting that. So now I can pump that saturation up even more and not worry about
Can you
messing up her
point
skin
and
tone.
hold where that, oh, I see, it's the word brush on the top?
Yes. Yes.
Now I don't see it anymore.
So over here on the left, I have my history. And so this shows me everything I've ever done to this photo. I've worked on it many times, so I have a long history with this photo, right? So where did I start today? There. So that's what I started with today. That's where I'm at. Darn near miraculous, isn't it?
Yes.
So that's what came out of the camera. That's my raw file. So that's what the camera saw. This is what I saw. It's a miracle. So if you have a series of photos, so let me come back to the grid mode so you can see these. Let me make them a little bit bigger. So I have these pictures I shot of mountains in British Columbia. And if I develop one of them, and I'm just going to do something just to do something quick to make it look different than the other ones did. Punch and clarity. Okay. And now I want to apply that to all the other ones. I have that one selected. I hold down my shift key, select all of them, and now this button right here becomes sync, and it will give me the option of changing whatever I want to change. So I can change all these things, or I can uncheck any of these, but I'm going to synchronize it, and you'll see on my film strip, boom, 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 they all come together and look the same. So if you have a series of photos you shoot of anything in the same light, you can batch process them. You just do one right and then tell it to synchronize all of them. You might be looking at yourself at the screen and saying, why did he shoot these pictures like this? I don't quite get it. So I was shooting a panorama here, and when I shoot a panorama, I don't use a horizontal format. I shoot them as verticals. That way I get the maximum file size. So as a horizontal, this would have been about 2 pictures, but I shot it as 3 pictures. And I want to make sure that I have about a 50% overlay. So this mountain peak is in this picture, and it moved over to the left on this picture. And so each picture has an overlay of the first one. So as I moved across the scene, I have all those multiple ones. And then here in Lightroom, I can put them together. So I come up under Photo, Photo Merge, and Panorama.
Loren, I just got back in. Did I miss much?
Yes. And so,
I'll
sorry.
see it on the recording.
Sorry, watch the video replay.
Okay.
So when creating the panorama, it's stitching those pictures together. So you can see that now that's become one picture. And if I want to change my boundary warp, it'll get rid of those and just line it all up perfectly. I hit merge, that'll take a couple minutes to do. So believe me that this is what it looked like after stitching those pictures together. So when doing panoramas, shoot them as a vertical and let Lightroom do the work for you. Other programs do this pretty nice too, but Lightroom really makes it easy for you.
So Loren, I have a question. It's
Yep.
Caroline. In everything that you've just done, the picture with the woman and this picture here, how many are saved and can you get back to the original?
So remember, we're not working on the original, we're working on a copy, right?
Right.
So we have the full history, so we can go clear back to as far as we want in history forever. So it will keep that forever. So it's not creating multiple copies of the picture unless you want it to. So say you wanted to have, let's go to this picture.
So if I wanted to export one of the woman that you finished, I would export it from the final state.
To do what with it?
I don't know, like let's say we want.
Okay, so let me stop you right there. There's no reason to export it until you know what you want to do with it.
Okay, so let's say I want to print that now.
Okay.
So I would export it and it would look like that on the export to get it to wherever I want to go with the printing.
Correct.
If I wanted to go back to the original state and export that one because I said, oh, I don't like this, I can go back to the original state and then how do I?
You go over here in history and as you move your cursor over the history up in the navigator on the upper left, it shows you all the changes.
Right.
So you can see at what point, oh, okay, there's where I changed the background. So if I didn't like that, I can make that adjustment. I can come back to before there. Okay.
And then you can export it at any point.
You can export it at any point. You'd have to click on it here. And once you click on it and make other changes, the other history changes. There are a couple of other ways to do what you're asking. And we don't have time to cover all of those.
That's okay.
But there are other ways of doing that. One of them is called the snapshots.
Okay, thank you. That's okay, Loren. Right. You go ahead.
Another thing that you might want to do is say we had this picture and we wanted to, I'm just going to do an auto tone on it so you can see what it might look like. That looks like hell. So if we toned that one, well, and then we got it the way we wanted to look in color. Let me just run it up. And you said, well, I'd like to have a black and white version of that too. You can make what's called a virtual copy of it. And the easiest way is to right click on the photo and then come down to create virtual copy. And when you create a virtual copy, it will make, again, it's a virtual copy. It's not copying the original, it's copying the thumbnails. And when you look at it down here in the film strip or up here in the grid view, in the lower left corner, it has a little page turned up. And that indicates that it's a virtual copy. And so, which one we're working on? This one. So then I can have a black and white version of that I can adjust the one that I just created and make it black and white, say. And then I would have a black and white and a color version of that photo as virtual copies. So when I'm ready to print it, if I'm going to print it myself, I go to the print module and print. If I'm going to send it to somebody else to print, then I have to export, which we'll talk about here in a couple of minutes. Okay. I just want to see if there's anything else in the develop module that I want to make you aware of right now. There's a lot more that it can do, but you know, that's the highlights. Once you have a picture looking the way you want it, let's find one that looks, let's say we like that one. I don't. Then we have to do something with it. So I'm going to go back to the library mode, look at it in grid. If I want to see it one up, let's look at this one. So I double clicked it to make it bigger. Then I have to decide what I want to do with it. Actually, I like this picture better. So anyway, I'm going to export it. So I click on export down here in the lower left. And then I have a whole lot of options I can do.
mean the
Where am I
lower
going to
right?
export it to?
The other left?
And so I decide, well, I want to export it to a certain folder on my hard drive. And I can create a subfolder. I can have it added back to the catalog. I can rename it. Lots of custom settings there to rename it. If you work on video, you can export videos. Lightroom's not great with video, so I don't suggest that. But then you need to choose the file format. So if you're putting anything on the web, it probably should be a JPEG. You can't post a raw photo on a website. Or if you send a raw photo to somebody who doesn't have a Lightroom or some photo editing program, you can't send them a raw photo. So most of the time you're going to export as a JPEG, and you have control over the quality. I found that anything between 90 and 95 gives you a nice balance between quality and file size. If you're putting it on a web page and you know what size it can be, you put it there. If you're going to export it to be printed by somebody else, unchecked resize. You want to send them the full file size. You don't want to make it smaller. And then you can also do sharpening. And sharpening you don't want to do until you know how you're going to use the photo. So if you're going to put it on the screen, you have your choice of high, standard, or low. If you're going to put it on print it on matte paper, it gives it much more sharpening. If you put it on glossy paper, it gives you less sharpening, and screen gives you the least amount of sharpening, even within the high, standard, and low. I have found that high works on screen very well. So I usually export, when I'm exporting for screen, I'll sharpen it for screen and put it on high. Sharpening is a day's workshop in itself. And you can add copyright info, all kinds of metadata. So your camera creates a lot of metadata. Some of them will put in the GPS location. So if you're posting a photo on the web of your child and it has the GPS location, you're telling people right where your kid is. Might not want to do that. So you might want to put only your copyright information or your contact info if you add that to your metadata. Then you just click export and it creates a new file wherever you told it to go. Now, one of the beauties of Lightroom is batch processing. So if you're doing the same processing or the same exporting multiple times, then you can create a preset. And so I know that on my blog, the widest picture I can have on my blog is 910 pixels wide. So I created a preset by coming through and selecting all the information. So I'm having it export that photo into a folder I call blog photos. I'm renaming it so it has the title of the photo and the file name. I'm telling it I want 91 quality on a JPEG, sRGB, which is probably what you want. And I'm resizing it to 910 pixels wide because that's the widest my blog can handle a photo. No reason to make it bigger than I need for my blog. Screen sharpening, and then all I have to do is hit export and it goes and does that. If I'm creating a new preset, I make all these selections, then click add, and it'll ask me for a name, and it'll remember that set of preset or that set of selections that you made. Okay, so if I want to export that one, I just hit export and it goes. A beautiful thing is once you've created those presets for exporting, you can just right click on the photo, come down to export, and there's your whole list of export settings. So I have one for a blog that if I need it to be 750 pixels wide, I know that that one's 600. If I'm making a 10-inch print, I have it for there. So I have lots of different presets that I've created depending on how I'm exporting the photo and what I'm going to use it for. If I'm going to print my own photos directly from my computer to a printer that's attached, there's the print module. It has lots of options. Printing is a nightmare to get set up initially. Once you're set up, it's good, but boy, setting it up is a real pain in the ass. There are some other modules that they have. They'll create a website for you. I think they last updated that in 1938. It sucks. Slideshow will create a slideshow for you. You can see I clicked on the website and now it's mad at me. It will create books, and they upgraded this, so it's not bad. So you can actually print a book straight out of Lightroom, and you can create multiple pages and just drag a photo into it that you like into a page, and it will. There's one. So it will create spreads for you, and you can add captions and all kinds of things. That's not bad. There's also the map function, which I don't find too useful. Some people like it, especially if you have GPS in your camera, which mine I turn off because they suck up batteries horribly. But you can plot on the map where your photos were taken. But I mainly use library, develop, and print modules. Those three are the kings. There's an awful lot more you can learn about Lightroom, obviously. This is just an overview. I am doing a series of classes starting on Monday, 2 hours a day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and next week at 1 o'clock. So if you're sitting around with nothing to do and you want to get into Lightroom heavier, we'll be doing it then. Any general questions right now? Specific ones that if we can hold off. So if people have any general questions.
I do, Loren.
Yes.
This is Carol. I do not own Lightroom at this point in time. I went out and I looked on the web, and there's actually somebody out there selling Lightroom 2019 version for like a really discounted one-time price versus the subscription. Is that something that's fishy, or what do you think about that?
Well, it's probably Lightroom version 6, which they discontinued. Did it still support it in 2019? I don't think so. I think it's been a year and a half.
I think it said 8.7 or something.
That's fishy. Lightroom 6 was the last one that they sold as like, you know, you could get, you could use it forever. But there have been major enhancements since then that are, you know, it's $10 a month, which, you know, means $120 a year, which is a lot. But, you know, other than during this crazy time we're in right now, I think most of us can find $10 in a month.
Right.
And they constantly update it, and it does get better all the time. And, and I, you know, of course, I'm a professional photographer. I use it, you know, 4 days a week at least. But I would be, if it's not version 6, which many things are missing from, and if it goes out, they're not gonna help you. You know, they don't support version 6 anymore. I'd stay away.
Okay. Lauren. Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, Lauren. Will next week's training sessions be recorded?
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Yes.
This is great.
Lauren.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Lauren, hi. It's Janice Hess.
Hi.
By any chance, can you recommend a book on Lightroom?
No. No, I haven't looked at them enough to know. Adobe has lots of videos on their website. Julianne Hough is that, wait, no, Julianne, what the hell's her last name? It's not Huff. That's the TV star. Oh, my brain just went out. Anyway, if you go on Adobe's website.
It's K-O-S-T, I think.
Yes, it is. Julianne Kost. Thank you. Has great videos. She is the only person, there's probably more. She is one of the few people who know everything there is to know about Lightroom and Photoshop. She's a frickin' genius, but she describes things in ways that morons like me can understand. And she makes really nice photos too, but she has just really, really good videos on the Adobe website. She's the evangelist for Lightroom and she's one of the evangelists for Lightroom and Photoshop. But she really explains things well. I don't know the books well enough to know who's keeping up with it. You know, there's lots of people out there writing books, but you know, my problem with books is, you know, I can't sit down and read the whole thing because there's way too much. And my problem with videos, you know, doing YouTube searches is you have to know what to search for. So if you don't know what to search for, you know, what good does it do? Which is why I wanted to do this overview, so you at least get a feel for it. You know, you're not going to know everything. You're not going to figure out how to do what we talked about today, maybe, but at least you know what to go Google or YouTube on. You know, you can find, you know, okay, he said something about using the adjustment brush or the graduated filter. You know, you can find a video on the graduated filter or any individual part. So that's what I really hoped that we could get out of today.
Loren, this has been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Loren, if we have any questions prior to Monday, how do we approach that?
Send me an email.
Okay.
Yep, Loren@lorenphotos.com.
Thanks very much, Loren.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon. Stay safe.
Thanks, Loren. Bye, everybody. Stay safe.
Enjoy your weekend.
Lauren.
Thanks. Bye.
Don't be